All right. Have a good night, Dave. Okay, so maybe I shouldn't say this or I should say this, but these next couple of blot. But tonight's not so bad. But tomorrow's daf and the next day's daf, you got to be a financial wizard to understand all these things, right? Because it's going to be talking about, well, the next parak tomorrow, Bez Hashem, is going to be talking about the kesubas benin dichrin, which is the males. Okay, we had it before where the males want to make sure they yarshin their father if the father gets married to two people, and the mother doesn't want the husband to yarshin her, and then the other wife's kids take all the kids' money. We'll see. But meanwhile, we're just finished. Well, let's try and finish the parak so we get a little head start on tomorrow, so we don't have to learn for that long tomorrow, and on Yom Kippur as Hashem. Oh, what time tomorrow?
I was just going to ask that. What time we have to do tomorrow?
Kol Nidre is probably about 6:20 in that area.
6:25.
6:18 in Shayashiv.
6:18. I ought to know that. No,
I
should know that.
You may want to look into what time they're doing that.
I don't know if you come at 6:25 and we start at 6:25.
I guess so. I guess
That's
so.
what I'm saying. I got to be there 6:18, but you have to be there whatever time you want.
Text me and I'll tell you where I'm holding.
And minchas at the second minchas at 3, I believe.
Right. So 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock. Does that make sense?
4 o'clock. Everybody sitting down to the Suda, no?
Well, I'm saying, how long is Yasuda for?
No, 5 o'clock you're sitting at Yasuda because you got to be at shul at 6:20. So 5 to 5 to 5:45 is when you eat.
Yeah.
5 to 6.
Yeah, an hour's worth of food sounds about right. Just want to give the guys enough time to do mikvah, kaparas, brachas, all sorts of stuff.
There's the whole thing about eating tomorrow. You eat tomorrow, right? Does that start tonight or that's only tomorrow? That's only in the morning?
Some say it starts tonight. Some do say it starts tonight. There are shittas. The ikr it starts tomorrow, but some do say it starts tonight. Yeah. Anyways, okay. So we'll call it for 4 o'clock ish. Yeah. I think 4 is about a safe time.
How long is he going to do it for?
About a half hour.
So 4 to 4:30.
4:35.
What about matzah?
Matzah is a good question.
You have something by you, no?
An hour, yeah, but that's it comes. It's Thursday's daf is very short, so we don't have to do. I want to do more. I think we did it last year. So I'll be to learn a little matzah Yom Kippur, right?
Okay.
Let's call it for 8:45. Yeah, 72 is 7:42, so by 8:45 we should be all right. No, 8:30 even I would say. 8:30 or 8:45. What do I say?
8:30 is tight.
8:30 is too tight.
So
no, that's your pants are gonna be too tight. All right, that's what's gonna be after you finish eating.
You know me well, Yaakov. You know me so
well. Okay, so we'll call. You know what? We'll do up 8:40. 8:40. 8:40 Musar. There you go.
So tomorrow 4 o'clock and
tomorrow 4 o'clock and then yeah, fine. Okay. So now again we're discussing an interesting case. We're on the mishna, the bottom line on Peches Amud Beis. So where the woman, everybody needs documentation. So let's say the woman only has part of her documentation and not all of her documentation, right? Meaning she could have a get. So if a woman brings a get to Bezdin and says, hey, he never paid me my kesuba. So then we say, okay, then pay the kesuba, right? If basically it's the opposite of an IOU. Normally, the person who lends somebody money, so the lender has the shtar. And then when the borrower pays him back, he gives him back the shtar so that he can't collect twice. Right? By the woman, it's the opposite. She has a kesuba. She's supposed to present the kesuba to Bezdin, and then Bezdin says, okay, pay up. Once he pays up, he takes the kesuba. Right? But what happens if she's missing documentation? So there's different scenarios. So Haitzia get, Beinim kesuba. If she said she has the get, but there's no kesuba, she doesn't have the kesuba, but she's saying she was never paid. Right? So now that's a pretty bad sign, because the reason why she doesn't have the kesuba could very well be is because he already paid her the kesuba. So that's why she doesn't have the kesuba, but she's saying she never got paid. So obviously in that case, on Tamar Aleph now, goiva ksubasa. then that's not obvious. I'm sorry. It's not obvious. She collects her kesuba, right? We don't believe the husband. Meaning, now why not? Why don't we believe the husband? So the reason is because a kesuba is considered something from Bezdin. Even if there was no kesuba, this is an important point. Even if there was no actual kesuba, Bezdin made a takana that a woman gets her kesuba. Right? And Mamela, it's considered from Bezdin. Since it's a Maisa Bezdin, therefore you don't ask questions on Bezdin. And if Bezdin, I guess I'm assuming if Bezdin doesn't have any record, this part I'm adding, I don't understand it any other way. If Bezdin doesn't have a record, Bezdin must keep records, right? If Bezdin doesn't have a record that this guy gave the kesuba, then he must not have given the kesuba, even though he has a pretty strong taina. She has no kesuba. So if she has no kesuba, must be he was paid off. But even so, Bezdin has priority, right? But kesuba, but let's say, so that's if she shows the get, she doesn't show the kesuba. But let's say the opposite, kesuba ve'eni maget, if she shows the kesuba, but she doesn't have the get, right? And so she says, Avad Giti, yeah, I lost the get. Really, I got the get, but I lost the get, but I have a kesuba. He says, Avad Shaibri, he says, no, I got a receipt. I paid the kesuba, and I got a receipt, but I lost my receipt. So each one is saying that they lost some of their documentation. So what do you do? So that's case number one. Then case number two, and that's Negeya Mamish now, if you have a guy who owned debt, again, Bal Chayv doesn't mean the way we call Bal Chayv somebody who's in debt. The Gemara calls a Bal Chayv somebody who owns debt, meaning somebody borrowed from him. So Bal Chayv Shehotzi Shtar Chayv, he produces a Shtar Chayv, let's say right now, a week after Rosh Hashanah, the year after Shmitta, Ve'ein Ima pruzbul, but he doesn't have a pruzbul. The lender says, you have a pruzbul? He says, I don't have a pruzbul. So the lender says, okay, Shmitta says that I don't have to pay you back. So both of these cases, they don't have to pay. The woman doesn't get the kesuba, and what do you call it? And the lender doesn't get his money because he doesn't have a pruzbul, right? And that's because they have to show proof. They have to show proof in order to collect. From the sakana and on, and Rashi says they made a gezeiro at some point that nobody should be keeping any mitzvahs. So people were nervous to keep getting, and they were nervous to have pruzbuls because they would get caught from the goyim. So from when that happens, a woman could collect her kesuba without a get, and a Bal Chayv could collect without even a pruzbul, because we're going to assume that they did it, and the reason why they don't have it, the reason why she doesn't have her get, because they don't want to get caught, right? So therefore the halacha changed. That's what Rosh Gamliel says. We'll see on Amud Beis exactly how that goes. Okay, so now the Gemara asks, Shmami na koisven shoiva. We see from our Mishnah that you do write receipts. Now there's a case, and we came across this earlier in Kesubos and maybe in Yavamis. Normally, like we said before, when somebody borrows money, he writes a paper and the lender holds onto it. And then when the lender presents it to the borrower and the borrower pays him back, the borrower gets the paper. But let's say the lender lost the shtar. He lost it, so he doesn't know. Right? So now what do you do? If he lost it, and the guy admits, the borrower admits he borrowed the money, but the lender just doesn't have the shtar. So now the problem is that if the borrower pays him back without the shtar, and then the lender finds the shtar, then the lender might present it again and say, hey, he never paid me back. So this is a problem. So there's the Machlokes whether what he can do is the lender can get a receipt from the borrower that he was paid. The problem with that is that now the lender who paid back the loan is stuck watching this paper, and he may lose the paper, and then he can get shafted, meaning there's a machlokes whether we make the lender have this headache of having to keep the receipt. That a shover is a receipt. So one shita holds in the Gemara in Bava Basra that he does not have to pay back. He doesn't have to pay back until the lender finds the documentation, he doesn't have to pay back. The other shita says no, he does have to pay back, and he'll have to hold on to the receipt to prove that he paid it back. So that's a machlokes. So we want to prove from this mishna that you write a shayva, right? Why? The ain't kaisin shayva, because if we hold that you don't write a shayva, you don't write receipts, then we have to be concerned for she's going to go take the kesuba, and then she's going to go collect on it again. Meaning, if she has a kesuba here, and we allow her to collect on it, right? And there's no receipt, so then maybe the husband's going to die, and she'll go to a different bezdin and say, "Hey, my husband died. I need my kesuba," even though he divorced her and he already paid. So it must be that there has to be some sort of documentation that he already paid it up, right? So Amarav, but Makam Shein Kaisim Ksubas. No, this mission is talking about in places that they didn't even write ksubas. We had this also, I think, in Yavamas, that there were some cities that they just didn't write the ksubas. So since they didn't write a ksuba, there's no way she can go scam anybody with this because she doesn't have a ksuba. That's the way Rav says it. Even in a place where they write a ksuba. So then that's what the Mishnah says. So the Mishnah Gemara asks, Shmuel Kaisman Shayver. So does that mean that according to Shmuel, that means you do write receipts? So Ravanan says, Shmuel explained to me what he meant. The Makam Shein Kaisvin, if it's in a city that they don't write ksubas, Amar Kasabti, but the husband says, I wrote a ksuba, and I gave this wife a ksuba, and I'm not going to pay her ksuba until she gives me back the ksuba. Allah lahavi raya. Then he has to bring a raya that he wrote the ksuba, right? Meaning he has to bring Adim that he actually wrote a ksuba, right? But if it's in a town where they do write the ksuba, but Amra like Kasavli, and the wife says he never wrote me a ksuba. He was supposed to write me a ksuba. The reason why I don't have a ksuba to present to you to collect is because he never wrote it for me. Then Allah lahavi. Meaning, if you're going against the grain, whoever's going against the grain has to bring proof. Otherwise, they can't collect. That's the way Shmuel explains our Mishnah. And even Rav changed his mind. And he says a different shot in the Mishnah. Again, Rav before had said that it was talking about a place where they didn't write ksubas, so there was no concern of anybody bringing out the ksuba a second time. Whether it's a place that they write a ksuba, whether it's a place they don't write a ksuba, get goiba ikar. The get, if she has a get, then she gets to, again, we had by a ksuba, there's three parts of ksuba. The main two parts is that the 100 for either the 100 zuz for the almana or 200 zuz for the psula. And then the husband could add on to the ksuba if he wants, right? So we're saying if she shows a get, then she gets to collect the ikr of the ksuba, which is the 100 or the 200. Ksuba, gaiva tosefes. But if she shows a ksuba, then all she gets is the extra money. She doesn't get the base money, right? Because if we're going to give her, because we're afraid that maybe she already gave the get someplace else and got the base money. But the extra money, we're going to say that she could collect again. So the Rav is saying that if she presents the get, she collects the main part of the ksuba. If she shows the ksuba, she only gets the extra. This is an interesting line. I don't know why of all places it's here. Anybody who wants to ask on me, come and ask on me. Meaning Rav is saying, I'm so confident that this is my pshat that if anybody wants to ask on me, can ask on me. Fine. And then by doing it this way, nobody's going to make sure there's no scams. That's what Rashi says. Fine. So then when it asks Tanan, but the Mishnah says in the second part of the Mishnah, ksuba veinim a get. If she has a ksuba but she doesn't have a get, he aimeres avad giti. She says my get. Well, I lost the get. Who aimer avad shayvri, and he says I lost the receipt. V'chein bal choiv shahitzi shtar choiv, and somebody who has debt, and somebody brought in and he brings out the shtar choiv that somebody owes him money, but veinim a pruzbul, but he doesn't have a pruzbul. Harei lo yiparu. So they're not allowed to collect because they don't have the right documentation. So Bishlam l'Shmuel. So according to Shmuel, why are we saying that he doesn't have to pay? Muki la b'makom she'ein kaisvin. We're going to talk about this case is talking about in a city where they don't write a ksuba. right? And Mamela, she doesn't have anything to show to collect, right? So Va'amar, but the husband says kasafti, I wrote a kesuba. Meaning it's a town that they don't normally write a kesuba, and the husband says he did write one. Damrinan lay, I see raya. We tell the husband, like we said before, if you bring a raya that you wrote a kesuba, vilay, my siraya, and if you didn't, and if vilay my siraya, and if he didn't bring a proof, amrinan lay, we tell him zilpara, you have to go pay, right? Since there's no testimony here, she's coming to Bezin, she's tying on you, so then you have to pay. But according to Rav, okay, so she can't collect the ikar part because she only has the kesuba, she doesn't have a get. But tesefes mia tigri, but she should at least be able to get the bonus part, the extra parts of the kesuba. So Rav Yosef says that the Mishnah is talking about where they don't even have proof. There's no witnesses that this lady even got divorced, right? How can, if there's no eidim that this woman got divorced, so how could she go collecting anything for this? Migu, he has a migu because the husband's saying what? The lady's coming and saying, hey, we got divorced. I don't have my documentation, but he never paid me the kesuba. And what does he answer back? I did pay the kesuba. Doesn't he have a migu? He could have just said, I never divorced her. Right? Couldn't he have said that? He didn't say that. He said, I did divorce her and I paid her. So then he's believed because he could have lied much better.
He could say that he's not divorced, but are they living together? Meaning, are they divorced or are they not divorced?
Meaning, you want to check to see if they're living together.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Yeah, I mean, like, that's not like they might not be together.
You mean just see if they I don't know how it worked back then with marriages. It could be that they separated.
He might be that boat driver where he's not around for 6 months.
Yeah, that could be. I'm saying, but you could say, like, hey, they're living together. So then if they're living together, then it can't be that they're divorced. I don't know. But anyways, okay, so but either way, he has a migu. So we're saying migu, the yachal member like Rashtiya on Talmud base. He could have said it's a migu that I didn't divorce her. He could also say I divorced her and I gave her the kesuba. All right, so therefore he has a migu. Taisus has different kasha. Taisus said, what kind of migu is that? Migu is normally he said I could have stayed married to her and saved money. So why would I lie? What do you mean he didn't save money? When they're married to her, Taisus says, it costs him. He has to feed her, he has to clothe her, he has to do all those things. Right? So, okay, so whatever Taisus Teretz is but that's Taisus Kasha, that either way it's going to cost it. So then the Gemara says, well, Amud Beis now second line down, Hamad Katani Seifa, but the Seifa says of Shimon Gamliel Oimer Minas Sakana Ve'elach, you should go Ksubasa, Shalai Beget, from the Sakana and on, meaning when nobody was allowed to keep mitzvahs. So therefore people kept their get hidden and their pruzbul hidden. So Isha go Ksubasa, but like a woman could collect Ksuba even if she doesn't have a get. Who Baal Chayv Shalai Pruzbul and a Baal Chayv without a pruzbul. But now we said it's only talking about Badika Eide Gerishin Askina, right? Rabbi Yosef said on Amud Aleph that the only time we'll be able to let them collect is if they're witnesses, at least that they got divorced. You have to have something that she has to have some sort of proof, right? So we're talking about where there's witnesses. To eat Leka Eide Gerishin, but my Gavya. So if there's no Gerishin, what are they collecting? Right? So now if Rabbi Gamliel is talking about where there's Eidim, so then before it also must be talking about Eidim, and it says that they don't collect, right? Ella Kula Rav Shimon Gamliel. So now the entire Mishnah is Rav Shimon Gamliel. There's something missing from the Mishnah. It says Harei lo yiparu. They don't pay. And that's only when there's no Eidim of Gerishin. But if there's Eidim of the Gerishin, Gavia Tosefes, then she could collect the extra. Right, but which was what we said on Amud Aleph, that why doesn't she collect the extra, the ikar? But what about the main part of the kesuba? Imaf gita gavia. If she brings out a get, so then she could collect. But if she doesn't bring out a get, then she cannot collect the base of the get. She can only collect the bonus. But once there was a sakana, even though she didn't collect the get, she Even though she didn't take out a get, she can collect the get. A woman can collect the kesuba without a get, and a pruzbul without a pruzbul again, because they're not expected to have documentation because they don't want to get killed by the goyim. Okay, so Amri Rav Kahana Ravasi Rav. So Rav Kahana Ravasi said the Rav Lididochta Amrid get goyva ikar. According to you, again, Rav had said that if she shows a get, she gets the main part of the kesuba. If she shows a kesuba, she gets the bonus. Almana min anasuin b'may gavi. So how does an almana? How does she collect? Her husband dies. How does she collect her kesuba? Be'edei misa. It has to be that she's doing it with that there are edim that her husband died. But leichush dilma girsha. But how do you know? Maybe he divorced her before and he paid her the kesuba. Umafka legita. And she's going to take this get that she still has in her possession. V'gavi bein, she's going to collect again, right? So how do you allow this? Maybe she's going to go around and take this get and collect it from a second time. So Gemara answers, but yeshevas tachas baila. No, we say that the only time an almana could get her kesuba paid for is when she's still living with her husband, sort of like what you were saying before, David. How do you know she was still living with her husband? I guess people just know, because then there's no get. So Gemara says, okay, but how do you know? Maybe right before he died, he gave her a get, right? And nobody knew about it. So it says, if he did that and he gave her a get before he died, and he didn't make sure that somebody knew about it, then he's just an oisvarf, as we call him. He's irresponsible, and we don't have to be concerned that she's going to double dip on him or his inheritors. Fine.
But what did the Yarshim do?
What do you mean? What did the Yarshim do?
The Yarshim are getting punished for something that he did.
Correct. Yeah, I think the Yarshim are getting punished. Their father did something stupid.
Okay, but
or lazy.
I'm saying
why? He's yeah. What can you do?
The Gemara is saying because he's the ice pipe, that's why he's losing, right?
Yeah. That's basically
But the Yarshim,
but Yarshim are sons of Isvars.
It doesn't mean that they have to get a
okay,
class.
but I think that's part of their Yerusha. They got a botched Yerusha.
Okay.
Because the father messed them up. That's what I think. I don't know, but that's what I think. So I'm going to ask, so what about an almana from engagement where they didn't live together, right? Again, we now have an erisin, and then a year later there's nesuin. So let's say she became an almana from there. So then how does she collect her kesuba? Beidei misa has to be with eidei misa. Okay, so the same question. But maybe he had a divorce already before he died. And then she's going to take out this get from storage and then double dip and collect again. So that can be. So what do we say? That when there's no other possibility to do anything, then you write receipts. Meaning if there's no other options, and the only way to give her the kesuba and make sure she doesn't double collect is by writing a shtar, and then that's what you do. So then, because if you don't say that, and even if there are witnesses that they died, that he died, maybe she's going to find edim that he died in one bezdin, and maybe she's going to find edim, legitimate edim, that saw him dead, but she's going to go to a different bezdin and collect, right? Meaning there's no shtaris, there's no documentation here. So memela, well, maybe why aren't we concerned for that? Where it's not possible, so kasbinon shayver, then we do write a receipt, and that's so. The Gemara's maskana is that we do write a receipt. Fine. Now the Gemara asks a question that doesn't leave it without an answer, but a question that's a shaila, not a kasha. This assumption was that if you have a woman who dies after her husband gets engaged, after they get engaged, but before they get married, who says that she gets a kesuba? Right? Meaning, who says that Bezdin collects the kesuba for her? Meaning, avada she gets a kesuba. We know that. We write the kesuba for the heirs from engagement. But we are saying that Bezdin has an automatic collection thing, even if she doesn't have a kesuba, right? That was the first part of the mission. But who says that applies to an almana from Erison? Maybe that only applies to almana from Gerishon. Ilema meha. If you say from in this armala in this garsha, that if she became an almana or she got divorced, bein Erison, bein Nesuin, whether it was from marriage or engagement, goyves akol, she collects everything, which Rashi says means the main part of the kesuba plus whatever the husband added on. Dilma the kasavla. Maybe that's only where he actually wrote her kesuba. If he didn't write her kesuba, then maybe Bezdin doesn't allow that. Okay, so the Gemara says v'chitema ikasavla ma'ila memra. And if you're going to say that he wrote her a kesuba, so what's the chiddush? Well, if he wrote her a kesuba, of course she collects everything. Why shouldn't she? So lafuke, no, it's coming to tell you lafuke min Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. It's coming to exclude Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. The Amar shaloi kasavla elam manashu kainsa. That the husband wrote it for her only on the condition that they get married. Meaning he wrote the kesuba and extra money in the kesuba. Says yes, this is all assuming that we actually get married. If we don't get married because he divorces her or because he dies, then the whole kesuba is null and void. So that's why we have to say that doesn't work. We're coming to exclude that opinion. Then that's why that's the chiddush that she gets to keep it. Dekanami, and we have a diak that's the pshat. The Ketani goyves hakol, where it says she collects everything. If you say that he wrote it for the wife, mishum hachi goyves hakol, that's why she collects everything. But if you say he didn't write a shtar, he didn't write a kesuba, my goyves hakol. What do you mean collect everything? All there is, if there was no written kesuba, how do you have anything extra in the kesuba? Right? It's the basic kesuba that Bezdin is going to give back as either 100 for an almana or 200 for a basula. That's it. There's not going to be any. Bezdin's not collecting tosefes if there's no kesuba. So we don't have any proof that a woman that Bezdin automatically collects a kesuba for an almana from engagement. So it must be from a brayso that Reb Chia bar Avin said, Ishtay arusa, if a man's engaged, his wife that he's engaged, not his wife, whatever, his wife, they didn't get married, they only did erison. So if she dies, like oinen, he does not become an oinen because they're not really married. And if he's a kohen, he doesn't become tummy to her because they were not legitimately married. If he dies, she doesn't become oinenes, and she doesn't become tummy for him. Right? We said this before. It's not. There's nothing wrong with a woman, a female kohen becoming tummy. Right? What was it again? We said pshat. She's not mechuyev to. Right? She doesn't have to. She's not mechuyev to become tummy. Mesa, if she dies, ain't a yarsha. He doesn't yarshin her. Meis who? Goyva ksubas. If he dies, she collects her ksuba. So again, you see clearly that she does automatically collect her ksuba, even if he died only from engagement. So when it says Dilma the Kasula, same case. Maybe that's talking about where same answer as before. Maybe it's talking about where he actually wrote her a ksuba. So Gemara says if he wrote it to her, what's the chiddush? Mesa ain't a yarsha. No, if she dies, that he doesn't yashin her. That's why you need the bryce. So therefore, the Gemara leaves it. The Gemara leaves it shtar, and that's it. And the Gemara does not have a source that Bezdin covers this. Yeah, fine. So Amarle, now another question. So Amarle Rav Nachman Rav Huna. Rav Nachman answered Huna. The Rav Damar get goyva ikar. According to Rav, who says that a get, if she shows a get, she gets the main part of the ksuba. Leichash duma mifka gita b'hai beidina b'gavya. Why don't we say that she's going to give out a get in this bezdin and collect it? B'hadra mafka b'beidina achrina b'gavya. And then she's going to take the get to another bezdin. To Karanale, and if you say we tear up the get, she says, you can't tear up my get. I need the get to be able to get married. Meaning when a woman comes and she says she was previously married and she comes to bezdin, they say to her, where's your get? We can't marry you off unless you have a get. So she says, I can't, even though he paid me the kesuba, I still need the get to get married. So are we choshev for that? So Gemara answers the Karina lay. Well, no, we rip up her get, the kasvina, and we give her a shtar. This kasvina agave. We write on it, Gita Danan Karanu. This get we tore up. This is what Bezdin gives the lady. They tear up the get and they write on it. We tore up this get, Lamishum the Gita puzzle, not because it's a puzzle get, because that's another problem. If you tear up the get, so then she comes to Bezdin and says, you see, I got divorced. They say, what do you mean? It's a torn up get. Maybe the get was puzzled. So they tear up the get and they write on the get. We tore it up, not because it was puzzled, so that she doesn't go collect another time, right? And that is what goes on, as far as I know, by getting they tear up the get after the get is written. They tear up a get, and then you get a no pun intended. You get a receipt that they were divorced in front of a bezdin. Fine. Somebody actually just sent me a receipt for a get, but yeah, but I don't forget who it was.
Not going to tell us the real name.
No, I don't know. Not somebody anybody would know. Not even somebody would know. He wants to know. The guy wants to know. He's actually son of a goyim. He wants to know if he's a chalal because he needs to know if his mother's divorce was legit. She had two husbands. One she got divorced from one she didn't. Okay, whatever it was. Okay, let's see a little weiter. Now, shnei gittin ushtei ksubas. Let's say a woman comes to Bezdin and she's got like a buy one get one free deal. She shows 2 gittin and 2 ksubas, right? With 2 different dates, meaning it writes on the ksuba 5 years ago she got married, 4 years ago she got divorced, 3 years ago there's a new ksuba that she got married, and then she got divorced, right? So everything went in the proper order. Right, so goyva shtei ksubas, she can collect 2 ksubas because she's entitled. She got divorced twice, right? That's a standard case. The next case a little bit more complicated. Shtei ksubas for get echad. Let's say she has 2 ksubas and only 1 get, right? And Rashi says both ksubas were dated before the get. So basically what happened was the husband wrote 2 ksubas for whatever reason. Oh, ksuba v'shnei gittin, or she has a ksuba and 2 gittin, which means that he got married to her, divorced her, and got married to her again using the initial ksuba. Oh, that's case number 2. Oh, ksuba v'get umisa, or she had a ksuba and get, and she has proof that he died without another ksuba. So she only collects 1 ksuba. Why? Because somebody who marries his wife and takes her back, he married her for the first ksuba. Meaning the default is that when the man remarries his wife, he's going with the original ksuba. Unless he writes a second ksuba, which is the first case of the Mishnah, the assumption is that it goes with the original ksuba. So she can only collect once. So Gemara asks, Ibai b'hai gavya, Ibai b'hai gavya. So meaning, well, first Gemara says a statement. Which ksuba, right? In the second case, where she's only getting 1 ksuba, which date does she use? Does she use the early ksuba or the later ksuba? Meaning, if she wants to collect on the early ksuba, if he had sold properties and he doesn't have any more money, and he sold properties, so she can collect on those earlier properties. So does she get from the date of the earlier ksuba or the later ksuba? So ibai b'hai gavya, lema to have a tiyuf to do Rav Nachman or Shmuel. And let's say that's a kashan of Rav Nachman or Shmuel. Rav Nachman or Shmuel, shnei shtaris. Let's say somebody has 2 shtaris, one after the other. Meaning the guy that lent the money. Well, it's easy to understand with a sale. He says, I'm selling you property A, and then he has another shtar that he sold them property A again. Right? Now, again, it's going to be dependent on which one is the legitimate one. That's what's going to be dependent on when he can go collecting from other properties, when does the lien start? So he says, Shnei shtars bittul sheni esarishan. The second one nullifies the first one. So, but isn't our Mishnah saying that the second one doesn't nullify the first one? She can collect from whichever one she wants. So it's a kasha on Rav Nachman or Shmuel. So when it answers, La vitmar Allah, didn't we learn Amar Rapapim? Why do Rav Nachman? But Rav Nachman is minded. He Isif pay Dikla, that if in the second shtar, the seller added a tree, he says, by the way, I'm selling you an additional tree. So that means he added something to the second contract that wasn't in the first contract. That means then the Tosefes kasvei, then he wrote it for the reason why he wrote the second shtar was just for the addition. So therefore the original shtar is good and the second shtar is good. Meaning when he writes the second shtar, if he had a good reason why he wrote it, so then the original shtar stays fine. So Hanami, so here too, but the Eisef law, it's talking about where he added something in the second kesuba, so therefore the first kesuba is okay and the second kesuba is also okay. Fine. Then the Gemara just says another similar case. Taner Rabbanan, Haitziyu get kesuba umisa. Let's say she had a get, she had a kesuba, and then she also had proof that her husband died. Right, so she was married, got divorced, got remarried, and then he died. So now she wants to collect twice. Hantamid Aleph. Im get kaidem l'ksuba. So if the get was written before the ksuba, meaning the second ksuba, so goiva shtei ksubas. So then she gets two ksubas because, like we said in the beginning of the Mishnah, ksuba gedemes leget. But if the second ksuba was before the get, right? Is that the second ksuba or the first ksuba? I'm not sure. Okay, so ksuba kedem is leget, but if the ksuba is dated, well, it's for sure has to be dated. The first one for sure has to be dated before the get, obviously. But ksuba kedem is leget, ein a goyva el ksuba achas. Then she only gets one ksuba, right? Because shamagarish is ishtay v'chziro. Because we know the rule: somebody who divorces his wife and then takes her back, amanas ksuba rishon v'chziro. He only married her based on the first ksuba, meaning he didn't plan on doing two ksubas. Fine. One last Mishnah. It's very easy. Katan shesiu aviv. Let's say a katan, which we know a marriage of a katan, a male katan doesn't work, not a female either. It does not work, right? Because it works with the rabbanon. So let's say the father married off the son early. Shidduch crisis, he decided he's marrying off his son before bar mitzvah, and with the ksuba and everything. Then the boy, when he turns bar mitzvah, stays married to her. So then the marriage kicks in as a deraisa. So what about the ksuba? He never wrote a new ksuba.
You said a cotton doesn't work?
Cotton's marriage does not work minat Torah.
A male
for a male cotton, not a female, right? We know
male and female.
we have cases where we had it
He
all the
could
time.
marry her off, but it doesn't. He can marry her off, but it doesn't work from the actual marriage. Doesn't work from the Torah. Either way, it's not. Either way, maybe there's a case that I don't know. Now I don't remember, but either way, we're talking about here where the boy did the marriage, right? So, and then he decides to stay married. So the original ksuba that the father wrote works automatically. Shalmanas kain kaima. That's why he kept her based on keeping the regular ksuba. Ger shenis gaira ishta. Let's say a ger, they're married as goyim and they have a ksuba between them as goyim, but then they both become gerim. Do they need a new ksuba? So ksuba kayemes. The ksuba is the same ksuba. Shalmanas kain kaima. That's why he kept her as married. Fine. So again, the same case that a kotton's ksuba works even when he becomes a gadol. You don't need a new ksuba, and a ger and a gezeiros ksuba works. Fine. So Amar Rav Huna lo shanu elamana masayim. It only works with the basic ksuba, either 100 or 200, based on whether she's an almana or a psula. Al tesefes einla, but she doesn't have extras. Extras does not apply, right? Because it was not written properly. It was written by a katan, or it was written on behalf of a katan, but it wasn't written for a gadol. So then the question is, Taisus asks, so if that's the case, so what's the chiddush? Right? Once they become married, so we said, as we said in the last Mishnah, Bezdin automatically makes sure she has a kesuba. So what kind of chiddush are you saying? Right? So Taisus says, no, because now when they get married, she's not a basula, right? They got married at 12, when he was 12, right? Now he's keeping her, and we say he keeps the kesuba. Yeah, but maybe the kesuba should be downgraded, because when he got married minat Torah, she was already a ba'ula, right? So the chiddush is no. Since they got married with a kesuba, when she was a basula, she maintains the basula. Right? That's the way. That's the chiddush again. So Amar Rav Huna lo shana masayim. Aval tesefes einla, she doesn't get the extra. Rabbi Yehuda Amar, he disagrees. Afilu tesefes yesha, she even gets the extra. So when I asks, meisvei chitshu netelas mashe chitshu in like chitshu, meaning if he makes a chiddush. When he became bar mitzvah, he added money to the kesuba, then she could even take the extra. Mashma, chitchu, and only if he added extra after he became bar mitzvah. Loy chitchu loy, but if he didn't add it after he became bar mitzvah, then not.
He
Meaning
gives his bar
he-
mitzvah money. He gives his bar mitzvah money to the kesuba.
That's romance, yes, right? Loy chitchu loy, right? But if he didn't, then he can't. So that's a kasha Rabbi Yehuda who said that she would keep the extra. So he's saying ema af ma shechitchu, it's af, even what he added, besides for what was added before. Okay, so then we're asked, Valay Tani Hachi, didn't we learn this? Chitshu, Naitelas Masha Chitshu, if he, when he becomes bar mitzvah, he, like you said, he gives his bar mitzvah money to the kesuba, then she gets to keep it. Like Chitshu, but if he didn't add extra, then Basula Goyim Masayim, Basula gets 200, Balmana Mana, and Amana gets a mana. So you see clearly the Brisa says that she does not get bonus money, which is a kasha on Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara says, do you have to do Rabbi Yehuda? Yes, it's a kasha on Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, so where did Rabbi Yehuda go wrong? Rabbi Yehuda masnisan atase. Rabbi Yehuda, he made a mistake in how to learn the Mishnah. Who saw ksubasa kayemes? Right? When he thought when it says the ksuba is around akula milsaka, it's going on the entire ksuba, the ksuba and the extras. And it said no. When the ksuba is kayemes, ikr ksuba kai, it was only going on the ikr ksuba, not on the extra ksuba. Okay. I hope I didn't go too fast. Whatever it is, hadron Allah hakaisav leishtoi. Yeah. Okay. A good danach and l'chaim. Should make many more siyumim. Learn together, and the Olam should have a Gemara Chasim B'Toiva. We're learning 4:00 tomorrow. Be'erech. All right. A good danach.
Good night.
Yeah.